Welcome to Between the Sheets, the podcast where we're going to cover a variety of topics related to sexual health and wellness. I'm Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer, your host. I'm a nurse practitioner and have been in practice since 2017. I have my Doctor of Nursing Practice degree, and I specialize in urology and sexual health. I am so excited to explore all of the various topics related to sexual health and wellness with you in a fun, spicy, educational, and non-judgmental manner. So come on, let's get between the sheets. Hey, welcome back to Between the Sheets. I have a great episode for you today with a wonderful guest. Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill is a clinical sexologist, specializing in bringing awareness to the scientific research revealing that female orgasm difficulties are treatable with medical cannabis, and that up to 42% of women are affected by orgasm difficulty, a condition for which there are no conventional treatments. Dr. Mulvehill leads the Women's Cannabis Project, a public policy initiative to get women's orgasm difficulty added as a condition of treatment for the medical cannabis in the United States and countries worldwide. So far, in the United States, Connecticut and Illinois have approved female orgasm difficulties as treatable with medical cannabis. Yay! Dr. Mulvehill is also the director of Female Orgasm Research Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to conducting research to identify proven pathways to female orgasm improvement in women's health and well-being. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to be here. I am a huge fan of orgasms. I'm a huge fan of cannabis. So I think we're going to have a great discussion today.
It sounds great. I look forward to
awesome.
it.
How did you get into being a sexologist, and kind of where did that come up for you?
Well, it actually... in my 20s, I was, after seeing my first sex therapist because I was having difficulty orgasming, I thought I was going to become a sex therapist. And then I went down the path of getting a bachelor's degree in social work and, became a single mom and, fast tracked, raising two kids, etc., seeing some more sex therapists. And, finding that it was cannabis after all the treatments and all the therapy that I had, it was cannabis, to my own surprise, that actually, I'm going to use the word healed me.
That's awesome.
So that's how I got into it. And then I sold my company in 2020 to go back to school to get my PhD, because I realized that the work that I was going to be doing, I was going to need a doctorate degree to do it.
Yeah, and the respect level, right? I mean, that's why I got mine as well. As a nurse practitioner, we can practice with our masters, but I knew I wanted to be involved in research and education and things like that, so I went ahead and got my doctorate as well. It's just what you have to do if you're going to be in the research world, I think.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, my research, I did my dissertation to evaluate women with and without orgasm difficulty who used cannabis before partnered sex, specifically. Not with masturbation. We looked specifically, because that's the highest group of women that have orgasm difficulty are what's called situational, meaning that they have difficulty. I call it during partnered sex. I mean, it's pretty much difficulty during partnered sex is the highest percentage of women that have orgasm difficulty. And so that research got published showing that cannabis was statistically significant in improving orgasm frequency, ease, and satisfaction for women with orgasm difficulty. And the fact of the matter is that's not new information. That's been in the science for anecdotally and in research I've been reading since the 70s. It was really early research was showing that cannabis was helpful for women.
That's really cool. Is there a particular strain of cannabis or way that you take the cannabis that helps?
That's a good question. So as of right now, because I interviewed women, we don't know the actual strain. What we do know is that it's the THC in the cannabis. And in my research, for example, I interviewed women. It was a mixed method study, meaning I was surveyed as well as 40 women with and 20 with and 20 without orgasm difficulty that I interviewed. Some were in places and countries and states where it was illegal. So they didn't know what they were using exactly, but they did know that it was effective, and it had some variations on its effectiveness, but across the board, it was, when they learned how to use it, it worked. In
Okay.
terms of the method of intake method,
Yeah.
some women were, I mean, in my study, it was statistically significant. 70% of the women were using cannabis through inhalation,
Okay.
mainly through smoking.
Yep.
But there were also women who I interviewed who, like one woman said, I make my own brownies and I take 1/4 of a brownie, with however much that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I take 1/4 of a brownie, about an hour or so before we decide we're going to have sex,
Yeah.
or a half an hour, whatever it was between a half. I think brownies were taking longer, obviously,
Sure.
in gestation, in
Yeah.
ingesting versus inhalation.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's
Okay.
the answer to that. Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, in areas where they do have approved medical or recreational, have there been any trends with what products people are using?
We found, I mean, I'm reluctant to say that the strains that was
Yeah.
mentioned, like because I looked at strains that were mentioned by the women with and without orgasm difficulty.
Mhm.
And like Girl Scout cookies was one that came out as one that both women with and without orgasm difficulty were using.
Okay.
Um, again, not across the board. I mean, some women mentioned
Yeah.
up to 7 strains that they were
Okay.
using.
Yeah.
Um, Wedding Cake was another one that came
Yeah.
out. I think Blue Dream was another one that was mentioned.
Okay.
One woman liked Peach Crescendo.
Okay.
These are just a couple of that they swore by them, like
Yeah.
certain,
Yeah.
so it's, the other thing we have to remember is the blueprint for somebody's endocannabinoid system.
Right.
And, women who had anxiety
Mhm.
using, more of the hybrid of indica
Mhm.
versus sativa. So it's really, what I learned was that the women I interviewed found and some were still looking for it,
Yeah.
what worked for them.
Okay. That's
So
really
that was the
neat.
key. Yeah, what
Yeah.
works for them. And then
Yeah.
also finding not just one woman said to me, and I believe this to be true, it's not a magic pill.
Yeah.
It's not a magic pill. So you have to set the right intention and the
Yeah.
right um the atmosphere, the setting.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
one woman, for example, realized that, for hookups, this wasn't effective, that
Yeah.
she was going to need to, and that made common sense to me. Like, you don't know this person, to
Yeah.
slip into an altered state of consciousness with someone that you don't know is not safe.
Right. Right.
So she realized I have to, go meet with this person and have a
Yeah.
conversation first and see, well, what do you think about this? I'm practicing using cannabis before partnered
Yeah.
sex. How would you feel? So getting
Yeah.
an element of safe, not just an element, a foundation
Right.
of safety
Sure.
is critical to allow oneself to alter their consciousness.
Right. Yeah. So what are the women saying? Is it that they get relaxed enough that they're able to get to that orgasm state? Is it that the increased blood flow? What are they telling you that is
Very good
happening?
point. So one of the commonalities across the board was the quieting of the thinking,
Mm.
the quieting of the mind. And that came from women like, some women had ADHD,
Yeah.
others had anxiety, depression, but the quieting of the mind. Um, and, what they call it in research is cognitive distraction,
Mhm.
meaning the thinking brain, just
Yeah.
the prefrontal cortex, if we want to use the brain
Right.
terminology,
Right.
is in the executive functioning, meaning
Okay.
chatting
Mhm.
and learning how with the cannabis to calm that. So
Mhm.
like one woman shared with me how she was still learning to experience orgasm with cannabis,
Mhm.
and she would tell her brain would be like, and this is kind of like more of the amygdala, the back of the brain
Yeah.
that warns us,
Mhm.
of any pending danger. So
Yeah.
she would say to me, her brain would say to her, just FYI, you're getting ready to orgasm, and she would tell her brain, thank you so much for that information, but it's really not helpful for me.
Yeah.
So,
Please shut up.
yeah. And that's so, but learning how to invite all these different parts of ourselves to the
Yeah.
table,
Yeah.
and say, okay, accomplishment, I know you like goal setting,
Right.
but we're going to set that aside right now, so that's the language of, I mean, when I was learning, how to
Yeah.
have orgasms, like, because it happened for me through a partnered, like, in a partnered situation when it happens suddenly,
Okay.
just by relaxing into it. So the question you said about like, how did women, like, what are they telling me?
Yeah.
Um, the sense that they can feel more deeply, they
Hmm.
can feel the sensations, and because their mind is quieting, the ability to relax into them.
Yeah.
So those were kind of some of the themes across the board of the relax, definitely a sense of relaxation,
Yeah.
um, the quieting of the thinking, and the ability to feel deeper, more sensation,
Yeah.
and stay with it. Now, too
Yeah.
much cannabis is going to have an opposite effect.
Yes.
So it's the get like kind of like the Goldilocks.
Yeah.
You got to find the right bed. You got to find the right amount.
Yeah.
How much is the right amount? Because too much, can't focus, not going to even
Right.
feel like, I
Right.
mean, I know for me, it's like, no, thank you.
Yes.
Like
Right. Right.
I'm
Yes.
fine right here, right
Yes.
now, just with this feeling from the
Yeah.
cannabis. I don't need anything else.
Right.
If you take
Right.
too much. So,
Yes. Well, that's why I was interested in the strains too, because I know personally, so I like to use cannabis for sleep for myself. I don't know how to shut my brain off, but when I have cannabis, I can shut my brain off. So,
yeah.
a lot of times I'll use an indica or a hybrid for that because they do that, that part of it is more sleep inducing. Whereas a
Yeah.
sativa for me, I could take on a Saturday afternoon when I got to get stuff done. And so I think it's interesting to kind of work through what is going to elevate the orgasm part of it. Because I don't want to go to sleep till after.
Right.
I need it to keep me going for a little bit first. So that's really interesting that there's this, not just the amount, but which one you're using. It might take a couple times before you figure out which product is best for you. So that's really interesting.
Well, there was a book written in the 50s called How to Become a Marijuana User.
Okay.
Becker is the author of that. I believe his name is Becker. And he talked about, now mind you, this 50s, it was all legal, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how we had to learn how to experience cannabis as pleasurable. Because if we didn't experience as pleasurable, then we're not going to use it. So
Right.
there are people who I have talked to, and I was one of these people who had a bad experience. Who used it originally, like I used it once in college before a physics class, and the kids were like, "Hey, come over, have a hit of cannabis."
Yeah.
And I go take a hit of cannabis, and then I go in physics class, and I start getting high, and it gave me tremendous anxiety.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I had to leave the class, but the point I want to make is the go low and go slow.
Yeah.
For people that have never used it,
Yeah.
use it alone first.
Mhm.
It's recommended to try. They're going to and maybe setting up what's called a pleasure practice,
Mhm.
meaning using it with the intention of entering a practice. And I
Yeah.
did that for a year and a half with 4 other women who were
Okay.
also working on their orgasm. This was
Yeah.
2021, right in there.
Okay.
Like we're really working on, okay, I want to surrender into this. I want to learn what resistance feels like.
Yeah.
I want to really develop this understanding, especially for women who have sexual abuse histories.
Yeah.
That is it was also a common thread. And our research found that for women with or without orgasm difficulty who said they had a sexual abuse history,
Hmm.
cannabis had a more positive, women had a statistically significant, more positive orgasm response using cannabis before sex.
That's
And
amazing.
that was amazing. And the same thing for mental, mental health issues like
Yeah.
anxiety, depression. If a woman said, I have, mental health, concerns,
Yeah.
that the cannabis was effective in helping them have a more positive orgasm response. So,
Wow.
it's and we look at this really from the health perspective,
Mhm.
that we know that cannabis has is linked to comorbidly to
Mhm.
anxiety, to depression, I
Mhm.
think women in my study had 56% more PTSD, women who had
Mm.
orgasm difficulty,
Okay.
significantly more.
Yeah.
PTSD, more anxiety, more depression, more sexual abuse histories than women who didn't have FOD.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
when we start looking at the mental health, the the health component, which is
Yeah.
what you're,
Yeah.
you're educating the,
Right.
everyone on, is
Yeah.
this is about women's health.
Right. It is. And because orgasms are so good for us, and the connection in a relationship is so good for us, that physical intimacy, whether you achieve orgasm or not, it's good for you. And then you
Exactly.
add the benefit of orgasm. And so, yeah, it is. It's women's health and men's health too. But today we're focusing on the women. So I think it's just so fascinating. And it makes sense, right? That if the cannabis helps us kind of shut down and quiet our mind, that it would help women with the abuse history and the PTSD kind
Right.
of quiet that part of their
Yeah.
mind so they can enjoy things too. That's amazing.
Well, and then having women tell me, give me
Yeah.
their stories. I have shared about a woman who had been told me that she was raped as a teenager,
Mm.
and could not orgasm from
Sure.
masturbation, from at all. She had what's
Yeah.
called anorgasmia,
Yeah.
and her partner at the beautiful thing is that she was honest with her
Yeah.
partner instead of faking orgasm, which
Yeah.
is something that, is
We don't
known that
condone on this show.
no, we don't condone it. Period. It's really not, it doesn't benefit anyone.
No, it doesn't.
Um,
And it can cause a lot of harm down the relationship when trust
absolutely.
if you fake it.
So she shared with her partner, listen, I have this problem. I just want you to know before we have sex, I
Yeah.
have this problem. And he said, well, try this. And he gave
Yeah.
her a hit of cannabis. She orgasmed the first time she used it.
Wow.
That was like 15 years ago, because they're married, they have teenagers, and they use cannabis before partnered sex every time. So she said
Wow.
it takes away some of the uh
Takes the edge off.
spontaneity.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
sure.
the
Yeah.
spontaneity,
Yeah.
since they
Okay.
plan it, but the having been raped, and that vigilance, women
Yeah.
have a strong vigilance center.
Mhm.
It allows her to quiet that so she can actually relax. And she said, I mean, that was just a beautiful interview that I had
Yeah.
about how it had just, it transformed her life. It
Oh, I'm
transformed her.
sure.
And when something transforms our life, it actually transforms us.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and women who, there was another one who had 3 surgeries that changed the shape of her vagina. And she was
Mm.
having a lot of pain during sex.
Yep.
And so she Googled and found that cannabis could be helpful. It
Yeah.
took her up to a year of trial and error to get
Okay.
her sense, to well, I'm going to say to get her orgasm back, but
Yeah.
it was a process that she started to have more sensation. She started
Okay.
to feel, so that's what also I noticed, is that um, for women not to give up, like to have
Yeah.
hope, that, wow, okay, I'm starting to have sensation, and to give up the goal, to
Yeah.
give up this, like, oh, it didn't work this time, because there's also
Mhm.
unlearning that needs to take place in
Sure.
many cases.
Yeah, absolutely, and sometimes we just don't orgasm that day for whatever reason. There's so many
Exactly.
reasons.
And there's
Yeah.
other things that,
Yep.
enjoying just the connection, even with
Yep.
ourselves or with a partner,
Yeah.
just that it's not a goal,
Right.
and I think that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn, because, being an achiever, and,
Mhm.
it's like achieving. And
Yes.
if we tie in our orgasm to achieving, it's
Yeah.
like, as one woman described it to me, as a hope frustration cycle. Meaning
Mm.
that and this was a woman who contacted me after Connecticut was approved. I
Okay.
was on a news report in Connecticut in June of this past year, and the
Okay.
next day I got an email titled "Help," and
Oh.
she says, I saw that you were on the news, and that cannabis was just approved for this female orgasm difficulty,
Yeah.
and I'm 76 years old. I've been
Mm.
married for 55 years, and I haven't orgasmed for more than 30 years. So,
Wow.
this is, yeah. So
That's
it's,
life-changing, that's partner-changing, I mean, just that's amazing.
there's power in that, and women just
Yeah.
contacting me, like, after the New Mexico meeting on
Mhm.
Reddit. There's a thread on
Yeah.
Reddit called Becoming Orgasmic, and I often post
Okay.
on that. There's more than 30,000
Wow.
people on that thread who talk about their challenges with orgasm.
Mm.
And one woman wrote to me and said, I cried after listening to the
Mm.
board in New Mexico,
Yeah.
approve um, female orgasm difficulty as a condition of treatment. We're still waiting for the state
Yeah.
level to approve it. But so far 3 boards have approved it. As I
Very cool.
mentioned, the Illinois and
Yeah.
Connecticut, and hopefully
That's neat.
New Mexico's will be next.
Yeah, very cool. I know
Yeah.
in Maryland, because I used to help approve cards for a friend's clinic. We have, the different diagnoses, and then there's one that says other, when other treatments have failed and you're still having symptoms from this disorder. And so we've been able to kind of use that to treat some of the anxieties, depressions, orgasm things. So that's helpful, but it makes such a difference when you can just click the button that says it's this diagnosis.
Well, I will tell you that Maryland denied adding
Did they?
FOD. Yes, they did. And
Okay.
there's a doctor there that I have a meeting with on Thursday of this week with
Okay.
a lawyer in
Yeah.
Maryland. She's going to be repetitioning the state.
Good.
Because I've been told that too, that it can go in the category of other, and not just by Maryland, I mean by other states,
Yeah.
because this is a condition that is often not talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and women don't talk to their,
Yep.
we're working on normalizing the conversation. So just
Yes.
packaging it into that other keeps it in the shame box,
It
in my
does.
opinion.
Yeah.
Where the policy actually reflects society's acceptance. So getting it listed as a condition makes it okay. Society is accepting this as a condition, like they did with PTSD.
Yep.
The vets did this for PTSD. Bless our veterans.
Yes.
90% of whom are male.
Yeah.
Many of those, Oregon, for example, was a state that approved PTSD
Mm-hmm.
without one published study.
Wow.
And Oregon denied our petition.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
we're appealing that decision.
Yeah.
So that's
especially since you guys have research that backs it.
research that backs it. So we're looking at an equality and a social equity issue of why, obviously if a state health director for the state of Illinois approved and said, I've reviewed it, all the literature and the studies, and there is evidence to show that it works.
Yeah.
There's validity there. Have it in writing in a state order. And then you have 5 states have denied it.
Yeah.
So, it's, I didn't
expect a lot of work
this.
ahead.
It's a lot of work, and we're gonna keep going. And it's invitations like this on your podcast, for example, of educating the community, and
and getting rid of the stigmas.
Yes,
both with talking about orgasms and with cannabis.
Exactly.
I mean, there's just stigmas everywhere, and there just shouldn't be.
I think we're at a time in society when we don't need to suffer anymore.
Right.
Like why suffer and keep something silent that's affecting our health?
Agreed. And I think so much research is coming out now on how much health benefits we get from intimacy and orgasms, both men and women, cardiovascular health, mental health, for all aspects of our lives. And so I think it does need to be talked about more, because it's not just, oh yeah, we saved our marriage, we get to have better sex now. Like, no, it's truly a health benefit.
There's the pelvic floor issues for women, for example, cardiovascular issues. There was an article recently about how we don't ask women, how is your orgasm? How is arousal? How is your desire? Like, because all of these things they can have cardiovascular aspects to them. Diabetes.
Yep.
So these are, I think, as we begin to see the research and the research will help normalize they'll work hand in hand with society. Like, look, we have this research that's showing it's
it's interesting. It was so funny. It was last week in my office, myself and 2 other physicians. One is a urogynecologist and one's a urologist, and myself. And we were standing in the hallway and we were talking about orgasms and how we don't actually ask our patients about their orgasms. We'll ask women if they have pain with sex. We'll ask them if they have enough lubrication. We'll ask men how their erections are. but we don't ask about achieving orgasm and are you satisfied? And it was
Wow.
so interesting having that conversation and being like, yeah, I don't ask that either. Oh man, maybe we need to start asking these questions because it's not just about can you do it? Can you have sex?
Right.
It's are you enjoying it and are you achieving that climax that's so beneficial to our health?
Well, I'm hoping that you do begin to ask those
Yeah.
questions, because I think it's going to work both ways. Meaning,
Mhm.
if the doctors start asking, how is your orgasm, and I mean, how it's like, how is your knee,
Right.
how is your tennis elbow,
Yeah.
and I remember, when I had this problem in the '80s, I was thinking, there was no internet, there
No.
was no place for me to go Google. I mean, I remember getting a little red book ordering for the
Yeah.
sex therapists, that it was so we have now a social network that
Yes.
allows people to even be anonymous on a thread, like I mentioned
Right.
in Reddit, Becoming Orgasmic, or Facebook has several
Yep.
threads on female orgasm, that we can actually talk about this. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing even in another thread in Reddit, a man had written about his wife's inability to orgasm and
Mhm.
how she was now lacking desire, and he was getting
Yep.
concerned because she wasn't having interest in having sex. And
Yeah.
the point is, it affects both partners
Yes.
in the
It does.
relationship. It's not a one-sided issue.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just fascinating that something so simple can make such a big difference. And
And
I
trans
mean,
Yeah, I
it's readily
agree.
available now, whether, whether it's medical cannabis or, we're lucky enough in Maryland now to have recreational. There's other states that have recreational. So it's getting easier to get. It's getting easier to get good quality cannabis.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's awesome that that can really make a difference for some of these women.
And one of the benefits of having it as a medical condition,
Hmm.
it is a condition.
Yeah.
FOD, female orgasm difficulty, trouble with having orgasm, is it's a diagnosis.
Yeah. There's
And
an ICD-10 for that.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the reason, because I've been, some of the states said, oh, well, they can go get it recreationally.
Yeah.
It deserves proper treatment.
It does.
We treat blood pressure with medication.
Yep.
We're treating orgasm, I don't like the disorder word. I like to
Yeah.
use the word difficulty.
Yeah.
And in Connecticut, it was approved as difficulty /
Right.
disorder. Some states require the ICD code,
Yeah.
which is a label. And by the way, it's only a label for women in the ICD.
Right.
It used to be male, or used in the '80s, when the
Mhm.
DSM came out, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, when they developed sexual
Yeah.
dysfunctions, it was inhibited male orgasm
Mm.
and inhibited female orgasm. And then
Yeah.
the next diagnostic manual came out, and it was female orgasmic disorder and male orgasmic disorder.
Mhm.
Male orgasmic disorder got changed to delayed ejaculation.
Yep.
So they say about 5% of men, which is still 5% of men,
Yeah, and I
have.
would argue it's higher, but of course I do see those people. So my
Yeah.
view is a little bit skewed.
Well, I have orgasm difficulty.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, even when I was doing my schooling, for my
Mhm.
dissertation, for my research, for my PhD,
Yeah.
we had to do case studies of, for
Mhm.
example, men who had situational orgasm
Yeah.
difficulty, having difficulty during penetration, for
Yep.
example, that they couldn't orgasm during penetration. For
Yeah.
these men to start speaking out too and saying, listen, yes,
Mhm.
because that's a shamed
It
group
is.
also.
Yep. It
So
is, and a
it's
lot of them come in and then their wives think it's their fault because they can't keep their husband erect and things like that, and I'm always like, "Bring your wife in. I'll tell her it's not her problem."
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, it is. And so just like how it affects both partners on the female side, it affects both partners when the males are having these issues too. Has there been much research? I know you focus on females, so maybe you don't know the answer to this, but has there been much research with cannabis and the male orgasm?
Not that I'm aware of, like,
Okay.
at all.
Yeah. I mean, I
Not
know
at
in
all.
conversation, I've talked to some guys who they say they last longer, they can go longer, and some guys that say it has no benefits. And I know, chronic use and
Right.
using it multiple times a day and stuff can decrease testosterone, which has its own effects. But I'd be interested to see, if somebody does some research on that too, just because there are men with difficulties.
Now, I will share that there inside of certain studies,
Hmm.
it has been mentioned. For example, there was a study in 2019 by Weeb and Just. It was out of
Okay.
Canada, and excuse me, they evaluated men and women who used cannabis before sex to
Okay.
alter their sexual experience.
Hmm.
And they said of the 28 males and females that reported orgasm difficulty, 50% of them said that cannabis had improved their ease or
Mm.
orgasm ease.
Okay.
Um, there have been studies. There was a study in 2010 by Smith was his name, and I'm
Hmm.
happy to send you these. Like I don't know
Okay.
if I'm happy to send you these for your guests, for your listeners,
Great. Thank you.
who said that you're welcome. Who was they basically were saying that it was not statistically significant for women in causing
Okay.
orgasm difficulty, but it was statistically significant for men.
Hmm.
So the
Okay.
general theme is that cannabis is more helpful for women sexually
Okay.
than men, and
Interesting.
yeah, so
Yeah. Very
it's
cool.
they so there is
Yeah.
it's not a clear now. There is a Dr. Jordan Tischler. He's my research partner. He's the
Hmm.
VP of our nonprofit, um, who is a cannabis specialist in sexual dysfunctions for male and female
Okay.
sexual issues. And he could give you if you wanted to do something with regarding
Yeah.
men and orgasm and sexual difficulty, he could help you with that for sure,
Okay.
since he sees
Interesting.
patients directly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you have a woman contact you and you're going to suggest cannabis for her, is there a way that you generally suggest women get started? Like, do you do one hit and masturbate so that you kind of see how things are going just for yourself and you develop that safety and that feeling with it? Or how do you kind of tell the women to go about it?
That's a good point. So I had a woman contact me, Reese from Florida,
Hmm.
recently, and what I had advised her is to contact. Uh, I gave her Dr. Tischler's name, for
Hmm.
example, to talk to a doctor who is already treating patients
Okay.
with cannabis medicine for orgasm difficulty.
Yeah.
There's a few and far between. There's another doctor, where they actually recommend it because
Okay.
I'm more on the psychological side, the training
Yep.
side, than the prescription recommend. Like I'm not a cannabis doctor, to
Sure.
prescribe.
Yep.
And then there's like Dr. Becky Lynn. She's in Missouri. She
Okay.
also recommends cannabis for women's health and sexual issues. She's done
Hmm.
research herself.
Okay.
So that would be the first step is to work with a professional that is prescribing it,
Yeah.
as in their business,
Okay.
in their
That
work.
makes sense.
My side of it is and I'm because I've been really working with the public policy side.
Okay.
I'll be working on a book soon which will include some practices. But when I have
Okay.
just some conversations with women, um, my recommendation is to get used to using it alone.
Yeah.
Try, and develop what's called a pleasure practice, where
Hmm.
it's an intentional practice, like 3 times a week
Yep.
minimum, using cannabis with intention and
Yeah.
and using it to really also, as I mentioned, the word unlearning in the
Mhm.
past, when we talked earlier, to
Yeah.
see like what is there? Like,
Yeah.
is there like invite all these parts to the table?
Yeah.
Is there accomplishment that needs to be acknowledged? Is there resistance that needs to be acknowledged? Is there fear that needs to be
Mhm.
acknowledged? And like in the altered state, being able to have conversations with all these different aspects of
Yeah.
oneself, and then integrating if a woman has, for example, orgasmed in the past and has what's now called like acquired FOD,
Mhm.
meaning they used to be able to orgasm, but they
Yeah.
can't for whatever reason,
Sure.
is to bring in fantasy.
Yeah.
Remember the fantasy of
Mhm.
remember how she orgasmed in the past,
Yeah.
and bring that fantasy back in to the finest detail. Like
Yeah.
be in that
Yeah.
and really allow oneself to immerse because the orgasm happens on its own.
Right.
It's
Right.
sometimes, I know for myself, I can just like the orgasm is like it's happening while
Mhm.
I'm still in the fantasy, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But without popping out and like I mentioned earlier about like you're going to orgasm soon. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need any advice from any
Right.
parts of our brain in
Right.
that moment. So to keep
Yeah.
all that quiet and be totally present and practice fantasy, practice meditation,
Yeah.
practice the quieting and
Mhm.
stop, when a woman is over, and this is something that for women who have been sexually violated,
Mhm.
um, especially as children, their self-regulation system has, in my opinion, may have broken. I'm
Yeah.
speaking from personal experience.
Yeah.
So knowing when is enough, and
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to need to stop now. This is too much. There's a lot of
Yeah.
intensity. It's enough for my body. Let me stop and take it. Like, to
Yeah.
learn self-trust. If,
Sure.
if you're getting tight, the gut's getting
Mhm.
tight. Okay. Why are we getting tight?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like self therapy in a
Right.
sense. And
Yeah.
then having a counterpart, having somebody and this is what I hope to do in the future, is to create like an app where women can talk to each other and say,
Yeah.
I had this. And right now, the best thing we have really is Reddit on this
Yeah.
becoming orgasmic thread for women to support each other.
Mm.
Um, and so anyway,
Yeah.
that's kind of where some general guidance.
Yeah, and everyone that listens to this podcast knows I'm a huge proponent of self-care, self-pleasure. I think it's
Yeah,
very important, and I don't think that you can have your best orgasms if you don't know how to give them to yourself, and that way your partner can give them to you.
very true.
So, and then I love that because you are altering yourself with cannabis to learn your levels and how you react and all of that in a safe environment. And if you have a partner already that you feel, you're married, you feel very safe with
Right.
them, maybe you do want to incorporate them and
Yeah.
that's fine. But yeah, I'm a huge proponent of that. One of the earlier episodes that we did was actually with a romance author and how reading romance novels, especially
Yeah.
for women, can really get you in that mood and as you're sitting here talking about these fantasies, I'm just thinking that would be such a great thing to do. Get a little high, read your romance novel, have your alone time, candles
Yep.
lit, environment just right, and have your fun and find that pleasure zone. And man, now you got me all excited. I might need to do that later.
Good. Very good. You're very, very good. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I was on a podcast a couple 2 weeks ago or something, and for some reason I was in the bath a couple hours before, and I'm just like, I don't know why. I feel like just maybe, you know,
Sometimes you just need to. It's fine.
it was like, this actually feels really good, because it was just, when you get busy and
Yep.
life starts happening, and it's like it can be forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was like, wow, yeah, that does feel good. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And I love that you say a pleasure practice because we really should have this as part of our lives. We go to the gym, we make dinner, we have pleasure
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. And it's different than masturbation.
Yes.
It's different than masturbation. And it can be pleasure practice with a partner too.
Yes.
Meaning it's not like we're going to the Olympics
Right.
going into bed. It's
Right.
like, let's explore. Because I've had some of
Yeah.
my best orgasms through these types of explorations
Yes.
where there was no expectation. It's like, let's take a hit of cannabis and, it's set the container. This is
Yeah.
acceptable. This is not acceptable, or this
Yep.
is the boundary or the limits. So you know what you're getting into before
Yeah.
you get into it, and then surrender.
Yeah.
And that's really this, in the research, they talk about women having difficulty letting go.
Mm.
Well, in my opinion, we only have difficulty letting go if we're in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. If we're in the part of the brain that's controlling, that's
Mhm.
monitoring, that's doing, giving us announcements about where we are in our pleasure, your heart's starting to beat now. We're noticing it.
Right.
I've been there. I know all these
Yes.
things. So,
Yeah.
so when you can actually bypass all of that and
Right.
be fully present to the pleasure, to the sensations, like that's what we're trying to do, is bypass all that executive functioning that we are in every day, all day long.
All day long. Yes, absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic. And, I like when you said sensations too, that makes me think like the different levels of touch, soft, hard, firm, all those different things. Do you like something that feels more like a feather? Do you like something that, is, do you like being choked? Do you like all those things? And what you might like with cannabis could be different than without. So taking those times to explore, like you're saying, it's just so important both with and without. But I think especially if you're developing this new practice with cannabis, you got to relearn everything.
Exactly. That and give up the goal setting, like really, saying goodbye to the patterns that weren't effective.
Yeah.
Using the other hand, typically
Yep.
we use one hand that, we have the same pattern, or we lay the same way, or we try and it's like, okay, today we're going to try using the other hand. We're going to go slower and, like set the desire. And you could even, you could keep a journal. I mean, for me, having 30 years of trying to figure it out with therapists and, different types of this and that, I was committed. And really what happened for me was that I had read about Rinpoche, this Tibetan monk who had healed his gangrene with meditation. This was the starting point for me. I thought, this guy was able to, after 3 doctors recommended amputation.
Right.
I was like, he healed his gangrene with meditation?
Yeah.
I thought, well, if this guy can heal his gangrene with meditation, I can heal my orgasm. So, I was always looking for the solution from somebody else. Some doctor has to have the answer for me. I'm not kidding. I'm absolutely serious. So that was the turning point for me, was like, there isn't another. Now, sex therapists can be guides, in the sense of I'm working on this practice and I want to stay, because I've seen women start with a lot of desire and then life happens and they get busy and it's gone to the back burner.
Right.
So it has to, someone who's truly committed to stop their own inner suffering, and stop the shaming and the to heal, committed to heal. To their health.
I love that. And practice.
And practice. Exactly.
I love it. No, this is such an amazing conversation. And, I'm, like I said at the beginning, huge fan of orgasms, huge fan of cannabis. So this is just like 2 wonderful worlds put together. So I just absolutely love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was awesome.
My pleasure. Oh my gosh.
And
the time went so fast.
It did. It really did.
I can't believe it.
For all of our listeners, we'll put some links in the show notes so that you can see the nonprofit organization that Dr. Mulvehill is involved with, and some of the links that she was talking about to the research studies. We'll put those in there for you guys as well. And definitely look her up and learn more about how cannabis can benefit you if you're having difficulties with orgasms.
That's it. And they can sign up for the newsletter to get updates on the research and the states. And if they want to volunteer for their state, we're looking for a few states. We just submitted Michigan. This past week, we had a volunteer in Michigan. So that's
very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Yes,
Stephanie.
thank you as well. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on Between the Sheets.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and spending time with me today. You can catch new episodes of Between the Sheets every Wednesday, because what better way to add some spice to your life than to have a new podcast on Hump Day? We will continue to explore common, uncommon, and taboo topics related to sexual health and wellness. Please send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. That's all one word, podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. Have a great day. And remember how important it is to discuss these topics with your friends, your family, and of course your partners. In fact, you can like, follow, and share this podcast so they can see it too. See you next time for more sexual health topics Between the Sheets.